It's been a while. Anyway, hello there. I'm Callum and this will be a bit different because I had an interesting Twitter thread conversation. It was a little bit odd to me, but I'm going to take some things out of to talk about because I don't think I've ever talked about them. Whether I do it in one video, whether I do it in multiple, we shall see. Right. Calling the expanded universe filler. You probably know how that makes me feel. Anyway, there's this whole mentality that the books, the comics and everything were filler. And I would say that they refer to the video games as that as well, because they go, oh, it was a movie franchise first, and no, I can't deny that the movies were the main thing that people saw. But Star Wars as a whole grew so much in the expanded universe, right, the books, the comics, the video games, that it became a whole multimedia thing. And I would say George Lucas even recognized that when he did the Shadows of the Empire multimedia project and the Clone Wars multimedia project, and orchestrated those, bringing together lots of different people to create pretty much everything but a movie. And that being said as well, a lot of importance happens in the expanded universe books. The continuation of post Return of the Jedi story, just that in itself cannot be called filler, because there are things that happen that have a massive impact on the continuity. If you had a movie later on that was set in the expanded universe, you would need to go at least along with going, okay, those existed, we can't put something in that space, because the story actually matters. For example, the X-Wing series with them taking Coruscant back from the Empire, from Izan Azad. That is such a big thing. And yes, the EU was lacking at the start, but that's how it grew. The expanded universe grew as it started. There were the old Marvel comics, droids and Ewoks, and Splinter of the Mind's Eye, even though the novel is a bit different to what it turned out to be. All of these things were how Star Wars were perceived at the time. And then it grew. 1991, bringing in Timothy Zahn's perspective, then bringing in Tom Weitz's perspective with Dark Empire. All of that important events come together, and they don't feel like filler, which is the thing as well. It's like, you cannot call them filler because they have so much of importance in them. And that's where I go also, that along the way, this guy said that there were 10 Rebellion comics between episode 4 and episode 5. And he went, oh, no, I mean, he was saying about the new canon a little bit. But I would say, I need to open my timeline. Let's have a look-see. Right. Well, we've got the Imperial era. The Rebellion era started, and then we have what we see of A New Hope. Of course, there's already stuff around it a little bit, but we can see the classic Marvel. Now, for the sake of this, I'm not going to count the classic Marvel, but there's the junior novel of the movie that doesn't really have much, but the journal Captive to Evil. There's a manga, there's a droids comics. Those also sort of don't count as far as the S canon, but that's alright. There's the Lego Star Wars, which I've put it as S canon because it's Lego, although it almost could be N canon. That's a separate discussion. But then you have X-Wing Rogue Squadron and a half, like I said before, from Empire issue 12 to Empire issue 40. It's all in between episode 4 and episode 5, out of interest. And you got Tales comic. This Tale comic would probably be, yeah, that's a non-canon story, but it did get put in there. It's very flooded in between episode 4 and 5, which he didn't seem to understand, because there were a lot of things that he just went, oh, the comics, there's only the rebellion issues, and he said there's 10 of them when there's actually 16. However, you gotta not think one-dimensionally. It's not just comics. It's also, as I say, these junior novels, and then also these short stories, which I have separated for the sake of this, but then Tales from the Cantina condensed a lot of them. I always feel like I should not put Tales from the Cantina. I've got my work in progress copy. I've fixed a bunch of these when I realised that I needed to put published in. Anyway, bunch of short stories. Oh look, Tag and Bink, that's non-canon. All of these tales, well, Skippy the Jedi droid in that. But you see all of these short stories here as well. And then missions. We've got some comics by Archie Goodwin, which is the one who did Marvel comics. But then these are still C canon. So these, as far as continuity wise, would be part of the main expanded universe time. And then, of course, we've got 107 issues of classic Marvel Star Wars, which S-canon being another thing that came up. He said that, oh, S-canon never happened or whatever. But I would say, why do you have S-canon existing and say that never happened when there is N-canon, which is just non-canon? Why not just put everything in there if it didn't go? It's because the events did happen in some way, shape or form. And I think my interpretation is the closest as to what it should be, as far as the events took place, but the exact details may not be 100% accurate as we're reading it. Got a couple of science adventures, some of these game books, missions, and there's just a lot of stuff going in here. But there's a bunch by Archie Goodwin that's in C canon there, and I mentioned that because he seemed to think that S canon was different. Also saying George viewed them as S canon. It's like, why would he need to view them differently when it's all just like, well, G canon was George Lucas and then everything else was Lucasfilm and how they handled it. So you don't have many main novels, to be honest, but you do have a bunch of junior novels. Rebel Force there. Yeah, Galaxy of Fear is in there. That's really cool. The holiday special event. I need to change that to C canon. I did change that. Because that is C canon, really. You've got Galaxies, Ruins of Dantooine, missions books, and all that. So there's all of this stuff. Each line is a separate piece of material, of course. And Tales of the Bounty Hunter starts in Center of the Mind's Eye. The comic adaptation actually retconned some things because it was released a bit later. Just FYI, as far as any of that. So many short stories. Then we get episode 5. You also have a Rogue Squadron game and Battlefront Renegade Squadron, but you have so much stuff. As far as quantity, it was jam-packed, and after Empire Strikes Back, but that wasn't what we ended up mentioning. For whatever reason, I thought the Thrawn books were made S canon. This person that I was talking to. No. Just no. They're C canon, obviously. Yes, elements in them like the dates for the Clone Wars and the description of the Clone Wars as a little bit of a contradiction, but contradiction does mean that it's the same story but told from a different perspective, and so with history being muddled by the Empire, it could quite easily be that they, through the Empire's propaganda and everything, did change it around and cause people to think a different way, and that's where history got muddled even for Mithra Neurowodo. Oh yes, on another note, if they did animated expanded universe, I would definitely watch it. Animation is the way to go, especially with the big three that are in the way of, well, the big three can't come together again. So the only way they'll be able to come together in Star Wars TV show or even a movie, if they decided to do a movie of it, is in animation and to get people to do the voices for them. Also to note, and I double checked because it was an interesting thing, he never said that they did decanonized. It is a little bit reading between the lines that they decanonized the expanded universe in 2014, because they pretty much shifted it all to the side and put it on under the Legends label, and then went, well, that's to the side, now here we're doing a new continuity, which basically, when you look at it, it basically is decanonized because they're going, oh, this is the main Star Wars timeline now, which is fine. They just needed a better transition for it. Things not tied up, loose ends all left. Anyway, things cancelled were terrible, but yes, there was all of that. But technically, the expanded universe is on a legitimate equal footing with the new canon as far as canonicity, because they never said in that initial paragraph that they were decanonizing it. They were saying that it was being, oh, now I've got to look it up. Here we go. A legendary, this is the one from April 25th, 2014, when they announced that the EU was being taken. So I have a quick scan. Yes, George Lucas was not beholden to the expanded universe. That's why he had G canon, because he was the creator. He could veto decisions, and even he vetoed decisions inside of the EU. And so he was involved in it. I have another video on that. I'm not going to repeat what I said there, but have a look at my Defending the Expanded Universe playlist if you're interested. See, they say that they will not tell the same story told in a post-Return of the Jedi Expanded Universe. That's another point. They didn't have to, and they could have still written in the Expanded Universe, because they could have said it after Crucible. Ah, yes. Here's a terminology thing I'll just note because I'm reading this. The first new canon to appear will be Star Wars Rebels. That must have been where I subconsciously clicked and went, this is a new canon, because the expanded universe is the old canon. But they just said they're still going to keep the expanded universe in print, presented under the new Legends banner, which by now we would probably be familiar with. I would hope that people would be aware of it at least. Yeah, so technically none of this says decanonize. It just says they're not telling the same story told in the expanded universe and putting them under the Legends banner, which to me goes, the canon tier system they released ready for when TCW came out, because they knew they would have to explain TCW a bit when T-canon came in. That ended up being a thing of going, this is technically still on equal footing, we just have to label it differently. We can all have our opinions on the actual Legends label, and as I've said things in other videos, well, that's what they decided to do. So technically, under the Legends label, it is on equal footing with the new canon as far as canonicity, which is an interesting point to make. Other than when they decide to mix up Legends label and put new canon stories in it, I'm not keen on that, but anyway. This mentality that it is filler is why we get continuity errors in the new canon. I haven't read it all myself, but I have heard about stuff that happens. When you have a filler mentality, and basically, I'm just gonna say it straight out. You don't care about the continuity. You just want to read stories that you'll enjoy or whatever. Part of my enjoyment is continuity and how it lines up, so that's why it's important to me. When you go in with a filler mentality of going, this book's just filler, you get a lack of important events happening in them. So when you read them, you go, well, why do I bother reading that? Nothing important happened that it will actually affect the universe going forwards. Also, obviously, this is me as a hardcore Star Wars fan, as an hardcore expanded universe fan, looking at the new canon from an outside perspective of what I've heard. The people that have the mentality that the books are all filler and they don't have an importance to the story and stuff, just to fill in the gap, rather than actually being in important pieces of the story. You don't care about the continuity errors, you don't care about any clashes in continuity, anything like that, because you just go, yeah, I don't care that much about Star Wars. I don't care that much about continuity, I'll just read it, that's done. Where, as an expanded universe fan, that hurts my soul that it's become like that, to be honest. Because one of the huge things of why I got into the expanded universe was because of the continuity. As I'm younger, I already had a wealth of the expanded universe that I was looking up on Wikipedia when I was younger. When I first started watching the prequels and stuff, that I was exploring, going, oh, this happened. And for all of that to go, well, that's actually not a detail in the universe, and it doesn't matter because it's not canon to it. Or after all of the time it being Star Wars, and this goes into it being put under the Legends label and then going with a new canon, then wiping the slate clean, they could have done new interesting ideas, like Darth Plagueis being 500 years before Palpatine, or Sidious, and then going, he just used a story to get to him. Anyway, that was one of the things I was thinking very first, when I still had a bit of hope for the new canon, and I didn't realize 100% how the expanded universe would be continued. Anyway, all of that, I go, that is what drew me to Star Wars. The single timeline, the single continuity, the attention to detail, and the great heights it went to. It actually had stakes. If someone died, someone died. If you introduce an alternate timeline or a new continuity, even just the second one that is a new canon, you go, well, who knows how many more there are now. It'll become like DC and Marvel, which I never really got into, because you go, well, that guy died, but then in this next comic he's out gallivanting around and there's no weight to it, there's no stakes. If your universe gets destroyed, you just go, yeah, and that is that universe's pathway. Now we go to the next one. And it just feels to me like it loses some of the weight and impact of everything that happens. Especially when it hit New Jedi Order series, characters died, things happened that affected the Star Wars universe for so much longer to come. Oh yes, I want to mention about saving the expanded universe as well. Well, if I was to attribute anything to saving the saving Star Wars, because it's come up a little bit recently, I would go Heir to the Empire. You know why? Because the Marvel comics ran for 107 issues, then stopped. They had some West End Games RPGs that came out around the time those were going, but then really not much past when the Marvel comics went, and there was that part where then there was nothing. And then Heir to the Empire came out. George Lucas was like, oh, this probably won't be successful, but I'll give it a chance. And then Tom Veitch also came in writing for Dark Horse with Dark Empire, so those two sort of go together. And you have Star Wars, bigger, better than ever, the story continuing, the important sequel to Star Wars Return of the Jedi and the Star Wars saga. They can, as it says, the official continuation of the Star Wars saga. And then the interest boomed, everything went off, and bam, more material. Interest was kept in Star Wars for those that were really into it. And even though I wasn't around at the time, I go, that is what actually had the prequels have enough popularity with Star Wars to be able to be made, and for people to be able to actually go to the movies to watch it. And they were only made because the expanded universe was so popular. And I've forgotten other parts how George Lucas, even when Heir to the Empire, in the 20th anniversary Heir to the Empire hardcover, at the 20th anniversary edition of Heir to the Empire, it has a little foreword in the front that is super interesting. Mentions about how George banned the prequel era because if he was to make movies, it was then he was going to set them. It's by Howard Rothman, the president of Lucas Licensing, a foreword, and it's an interesting insight into it. So if you can get your hands on this, I got this a few years ago now, and I managed to get it ordered in from a local bookshop. And without a Legends banner on it too, because it was after 2014, so I was like, perfect. But that's just my preference as far as the banner goes. Yeah, so interesting stuff and all of that, and I hope this really interests you guys, and I hope this has been a little bit of learning as well for you guys to go, we've heard about all these other interpretations, now you're hearing mine, because sometimes things will come up in conversations that I go, oh, right, I should make a YouTube video of it. And that's why I've done this here, because I don't talk to too many people about Star Wars in real life. I go, oh, cool, I will be able to do stuff from that. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, letting me know your thoughts in the comments. Harry.